Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Eating Disorder Hope Google Hangouts. I am here live with the president and founder of Eating Disorder Hope, the lovely Jacquelyn Ekern, and I myself am Crystal Karges. I am the Special Projects Coordinator for Eating Disorder Hope, and we're so grateful that you took time out of your day to join us today. We're so excited to be with you here and to just share a little bit about our personal journeys in recovery from an eating disorder. And we hope that we can just encourage you in your walk wherever you are today. We want you to know that there is hope and there is possibility for healing. And we're just so glad that you've joined us today. And so we're going to get started with some questions. And I will start by asking you, Miss Jacquelyn, if you could just share with us a little bit about what you think led to the development of your eating disorder.
Sure. Thanks, Crystal. We're really excited to be here with you today. Well, I would say that my eating disorder was a combination of factors. I think I have a genetic predisposition. I think that I run a little anxious, a little depressive, and perfectionistic, and also highly approval seeking. Those were some real strong personality traits out of the chute that might have been precursors. And then I had some trauma in my childhood that I wasn't able to cope with well, and I think I was looking for some sort of way to express that internal pain and confusion about that trauma that hadn't really been in-depthly addressed. And then I would also say that environmental factors were a really big deal for me in terms of media imagery and some of my own insecurities about my appearance, and thinking, oh, if I could look like these image covers or these airbrushed images, that I would then be so powerful, so capable of success, so much more lovable. And I fed myself those lies. So I would say those are the factors that underlie the development of my eating disorder.
Thank you so
How
much
about
for sharing
you,
that.
Crystal? What would you say?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to you on so many levels. And I think, that research has really shown us that now that there is a genetic component to eating disorder development. And I know that, I think I was the same way. I think I was predisposed genetically to developing anorexia. And it was just kind of all the factors combining together, creating the perfect storm, having the genetic predisposition and just kind of being in an environment where I couldn't cope well. And I too was always a high achiever, always perfectionistic thinker. And I think what kind of maybe triggered it a little bit was the need to be accepted and loved, and I wanted to please everybody too, like you were saying, Jacquelyn. And I did some long distance running competitively in high school, and for me that was a way to gain approval and acceptance, and I kind of took off with that. And so for me, I can definitely say it was a combination of factors as well. It's genetics combined with the environmental issues, and so I can definitely relate to you on that. And I think many of our viewers could probably say the same thing as well. And I guess that kind of leads me to my next question for you, Jacquelyn, is, having an eating disorder is such a struggle. And when you're in it, sometimes you don't even realize how intense your struggles are, because that's your reality and you just learn to live in it and learn to accept it. But now that you are in recovery and you've been in recovery for a long time, looking back on it, what would you say would be like the lowest point of your eating disorder?
Yeah, there was a lot of really low points. This is kind of interesting because Crystal struggled more with anorexia, she's sharing with all of you, and I struggled more with bulimia. I kind of have gone through different stages of a wide spectrum of disordered eating, but my largest battle was with bulimia. And I mean, there were certainly some times on the bathroom floor in my apartment alone where I was so sick, and I can remember just the coolness of the tile feeling so good and just so miserable and so depressed. So that's one. But probably when I went into treatment, when I was 28, I was working. I had this whole sort of facade going that I had it together for those that didn't know me well. And I had to kind of pull the plug on that. So I had to go into treatment, take a leave from my job for 30 days at the time, and there wasn't a lot of support in my immediate circle for me to do that. And I was really miserable, and I felt like it was maybe the beginning of the end, but in fact it was the beginning of a whole new life. And it wasn't like there was some trajectory that went straight up at all. It was very much like this. But that initial break from the behavior pattern with the bulimia, for one, was huge, just to get 30 days without that pattern of behavior. And then the therapy went through with that. So that was the lowest point, but also the start of a much better life for me. And what would you say for you, Crystal, your lowest point was?
Well, thanks for sharing, first of all. I know it's really hard to kind of revisit those days and remember just kind of how awful, our moments of despair were. And so I appreciate you sharing, but I know I can think of so many times in my eating disorder now that I think one time in particular, I just remember having absolutely no energy, no motivation to engage, or I just felt so fatigued, and I couldn't go out with my friends. I couldn't even have a relationship with my own family just because I was so just zoned into my eating disorder. And it was a really defining moment for me too, because I was really looking forward to going to college, and all of a sudden the possibility of going to college was in limbo. I just realized that I can't even function. I can't even, let alone sit in a classroom or do sports or do any of the things I love, because I was so very sick. And I think, there was a couple of trips to the emergency room where, my heart rate was out of whack. And I think those things kind of really scared me, because I realized how severe my eating disorder had gotten. And definitely a wake-up call. Like you said, it was the beginning of a whole new journey, and it's hard to get to that point. And I'm sure many of our viewers can relate to that. It's hard to be at a point where you feel so discouraged because of how far gone you are and how deep you are in your eating disorder. But at the same time, that can be such a critical turning point towards recovery. And I know that was something for me to realize, wow, I'm so sick and I don't want to be here anymore. What can I do to get better? And there's a lot of steps that you and I both had to take. And Jacquelyn, what would you say were some of the key things that you did do to recover from your eating disorder?
A lot. I would say that, the biggest start for me was going inpatient for my case. Now, I know the great thing about treatment these days is there's so many levels of care. There's outpatient, there's partial hospitalization, there's almost anything that would be a good fit for you that can be worked out. So maybe it wouldn't have to be to that extreme for everyone, but for me that was a key thing, breaking the habit by going inpatient, and then working with a therapist for 4 years on and off afterward was absolutely life-changing. my sense of self-esteem stopped being externally based, and I was able to find it within. And I knew that as a little girl. I mean, I understood that kind of a value system, but I had sort of sold out to my eating disorder and trying to maintain this image. And so I started really trying to get in touch with my value system and exploring better communication skills so I could have more meaningful, authentic relationships. I did a lot of work on the trauma I mentioned earlier that was painful and a lot of tears, sort of a grieving process. I employed what I had learned from the nutritionist to start having a healthier relationship with food and my body. I started trying to exercise in more healthy ways. I attended support groups. Those things were all helpful. I think bibliotherapy is really a good thing too. I read a ton of books, and I would just take what I wanted and leave the rest, but there were just key points I would pull from each of those things that was helpful to me. And maybe the biggest key to my recovery was never getting up, always getting back up on that horse when I fell down, because as I mentioned earlier, it was no straight up trajectory of recovery for me. I would slip constantly, and then it got better, and then I'd have some relapse, and if I didn't stop and think, look how far I've come, and then I'd look back maybe a few years and I'd think, okay, this might suck that I've just had this slip or I'm in the middle of this again, but I have made a lot of progress and I can start again, and that's a key. How about you? What were the key factors for you, Crystal, in your recovery?
Well, I think you first by stopping the behaviors, I mean, that was such a key point for me, to stop the restricting and to do the weight restoration. And really, I think psychotherapy wouldn't have been effective for me unless I got to that point of weight restoration and nourishing my body adequately. And so really I worked really closely, with a dietitian and a psychiatrist just to make sure that I was stable medically first. And then once I got to that point, I was able to start doing some therapeutic interventions that were really helpful, to be able to process a lot of things from my own childhood and adulthood as well that I had suppressed by the eating disorder. And to really kind of work through those things, it's hard, it's hard to dig up the pain from the past. And, and when you've used the eating disorder for so long as a way of coping, and to not have that crutch anymore as an option is really, really painful. But at the same time, it's so healing. And I think, like you said, Jacquelyn, it's not a straight up process. It's a lot of ups and downs, and and there was a couple times of relapse too, but to be able to get back up on my feet and do the next thing, whether that's following my meal plan, going to my next appointment, no matter what is going on with me in my journey, it's about being consistent and being dedicated to the recovery process. Because there are so many changes, and I think if you are motivated to do the next thing, that'll help you to keep going forward, even if it's 5 steps backwards and 2 steps forward, going a little bit at a time. So those were things that really helped me in my recovery, and it has been an ongoing process that has gotten easier over time, but I think definitely those initial phases, like you said, Jacquelyn, you were able to get inpatient therapy, and I think, in that beginning part of your recovery, it's more acute. There's a lot of behaviors that have to be disrupted in order to really move forward with treatment, and I'm grateful that I had that treatment as well to really intervene when the eating disorder has such a grip on me. And like you shared as well. And Jacquelyn, with talk about our recovery, do you consider yourself fully recovered now, or how would you kind of define your recovery at this point from an eating disorder?
I have colleagues that I dearly love and respect that do state that they feel that they are, and I so admire that and would like to say that about myself, but for me, my unique journey, I would say it's an ongoing process of recovery. I no longer practice bulimia. I no longer practice disordered eating behaviors, but there's still growth. I still have to think through my thinking processes. And one of the techniques I learned was something called cognitive behavior therapy, which is just to correct a sort of dysfunctional thought about yourself or life and try to balance it out. So I still do that a lot with myself. I have to constantly work on reaffirming an appreciation for my body as it functions, not just how it looks. But I would say overall, I mean, there's just no comparison. It's fabulous, but I think it'll be a growing process all of my life to get to where I become increasingly comfortable in my own skin and increasingly comfortable being authentic and genuine. What about you? What's your take?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I think I've recovered in the sense that I'm not engaging in an active eating disorder. I don't restrict or, I think about all the things that I used to do when I was really sick, especially like things revolving around food and weighing myself and body checking and a lot of food rituals and things like that. That's not necessarily a part of my life, but I think I have certain personality traits that I've always kind of had and that I was born with, and that were kind of a part of my eating disorder, like the perfectionistic thinking. I tend to be a little anxious, like that's just kind of my personality. And I think those types of personality traits of myself are still very true, but I've learned to kind of balance it and, recognize, things are not so black and white and how to kind of find the middle ground. And being in recovery and having a clear cognition, I think that's not under control of the eating disorder, has allowed me to kind of see those personality traits in a new view and to understand that that's part of who I am, but at the same time to recognize when those types of when those behavior and personality traits kind of feed into eating disorder type of thinking. So that's a little bit, I don't know, I would say the same thing, it's a little bit of both. Like I think recovering from the eating disorder behaviors has definitely been true, but just being aware that that's something that will always be susceptible to, I think. So I think another question that we would love to share with our viewers, Jacquelyn, is what advice would you offer to someone who's struggling with an eating disorder now?
I would say one thing I wanted to say too, real quick, just to backtrack, is like what Crystal said, recovery is often an ongoing process over a lifetime, and major life events can trigger relapses or just struggles, maybe not a full-fledged relapse. And we really aspire to be a place of safety, support, and hope for you anytime that you're struggling, or if you just feel like you need some reinforcement in your ongoing path of recovery. And I think the recovery path is a blessed path because it causes us to engage in some pretty significant introspection, some pretty good clarification of our values, who we are, what we want to do in this world. So it's a blessing in disguise. And then as far as advice for somebody struggling with an eating disorder now, boy, and there's so many levels of it. It can be someone who is just becoming a little bit obsessive with dieting and wondering if it's going south on them into an eating disorder. Or it could be somebody we're talking to right now who has severe compromised health and could potentially have a heart attack at any moment. It could be an individual with bulimia whose electrolyte balance is dangerously off balance. Or you know, binge eating disorder and all the complications that go along with that, and diabetes and joint pain from extra weight with the binge behavior. There's just such a spectrum, and we really aspire to relate to folks in all these arenas across this wide spectrum of disordered eating. And I think one of the first things that someone struggling should do is reach out to someone you trust and share where you're at and ask for their help. And doing so can be different. If it's a young person who's still in school, their school counselor or a really close friend might be a good person. Ideally, it would be a parent that you would reach out to and share if you're struggling in a minor. Then when you get to more of adulthood, it might be your spouse, it might be one of your close friends, it could even be a colleague or a counseling service available through your employer. But what matters is that you're honest, that you break through, you share what's going on, and you ask for help. I would then say seeking treatment from qualified professionals is really crucial. And there are so many wonderful people in the field to reach out to it. And generally the starting point would be a nutritionist in your area or a therapist in your area that you could talk with, have some assessment done, and they could help you to determine what level of care might be best suited for you. And in finding those professionals, if you are fortunate enough to have insurance, calling your insurance company is a great place. They can tell you who specializes in that and what your coverage is. If, like so many that I hear from almost daily that have no medical insurance and it would be really difficult to pay for treatment, I do understand that the county governments are often helpful in securing some form of treatment, so that's a good place to reach out to your local county government. Also, there's some online resources that we can give you on our website where there's scholarships and assistance with getting help for recovery. One that comes to mind is the Kirsten Hagelin Fund. I know you could look that up online. They offer scholarships, and there's several others. And Crystal, in your experience, what would you say your best advice for somebody struggling with an eating disorder right now is?
Wow, you just had so many great points that you shared, Jacquelyn, and I would certainly echo that and say, you know, an eating disorder can feel so isolating. It can feel like you're all alone, that nobody understands. It can feel as though there's no way out. And I think the key point is to know that you should not suffer in silence and that you should not allow the eating disorder to continue persisting. And you know, I just want to stress the importance of that. And you said that as well, Jacquelyn, to reach out to somebody that you trust, that you can confide in, because the sooner you can expose the eating disorder for what it is, the sooner you can start healing and finding recovery and start your journey towards freedom. And, you know, we have so many great resources on the Eating Disorder Hope website. And for our viewers who are watching, if you look in, you can see we have our website up, eatingdisorderhope.com. And there are amazing resources for treatment providers in your area. Just connecting with somebody can really be a healing part of your journey. And like I said, you know, being able to expose the eating disorder for what it is and really speak out and break the silence is a key part of healing. And so, Jacquelyn, I think just kind of to wrap this up, if you could maybe just share with our viewers a little bit about where you are now and what life has been like since you've been in recovery from an eating disorder. If you can share that, we would love to hear about that.
Sure. Well, I'm really glad, Crystal, that you're in recovery because I can't imagine what a loss it would be in this world without you. For those of you that don't know Crystal yet, or as you get to know her, hopefully in more videos, she is a really, really lovely soul and brings so much positive joy to the world. And I imagine many of our viewers are very special, gifted people too that have so much to share and are so needed. And I hope you'll hold on to that and believe in that, even if you're in a point of despair right now, because we need you in this world. We need your gifts and talents. We want you um, to be here with us, thriving. And I would say life now is good. I am married. I have a child, which is in and of itself pretty phenomenal because the eating disordered behavior really wreaked some havoc on my system, and I really wasn't sure if I would be able to conceive. And it was no easy process to conceive, but I did. And I now have a healthy, wonderful son, and I've been married 13 years, and I am a licensed professional counselor, and we've been able, with some really talented people in the team, to build this organization that's growing to help others. And my faith in God is stronger than ever. But it's no cakewalk, to be sure. I mean, I still, like I said, I still have to use a lot of CBT, which is, correcting sort of negative thoughts and that sort of thing for myself. And life can be so painful and frustrating. But I think for me, at the end of the day, my rope has been spirituality, my belief in God, and my faith in something bigger than myself that's in control, not me, helps me to let go a bit and cope and carry on. And life's good, and I want this for our viewers too. Crystal, how has your life changed, and how was recovery for you?
Well, thank you for sharing. And your life has definitely been such an inspiration. And to see this amazing community that you've created and founded, because you, I think, had such courage to find recovery. And I relate to so many things that you share too. Being in recovery doesn't mean that life is all roses and daisies, but it does make life so much sweeter because I feel like you can really experience it. Life is so beautiful, and that includes the joys and the sorrows and everything. And to really being able to embrace it without the crutch of an eating disorder has been so life-changing. But as far as my own life, I also am married and have 3 girls, and that is just, like you said, a miracle in itself because I just did not think my body would be able to carry a baby after the horrible way that I abused it during my eating disorder. But that is the beauty of recovery, and that's the hope of recovery, is that our bodies are resilient and they are amazing, and with adequate care and nutrition and gentleness that they recover. And I just feel so blessed that I've had been able to have my children and my husband. I was able to finish school, which was another miracle in itself because I really struggled with my eating disorder during high school and college. And so being able to finish school and do the things I wanted academically and career-wise were also just a huge, huge milestone for me in my recovery. And also, like you said, just finding my faith in God and really my trust in God and knowing that there's something that is so much bigger than me. And I think having that basis to stand on really brings so much hope to your life. And I know it has for me because there's so many moments where I know for me I felt worthless, like my life is not valuable, but there can be nothing farther from the truth. And I would love to just emphasize that with our viewers today, that your life is so valuable and so worthy of recovery, and you do deserve to find healing, and you do deserve a life without your eating disorder, and it is possible for you. And I know that's something that Jacquelyn and I just really wanted to share with all of you from our hearts and from our journey and from our walks in life, that we've experienced that and that it is possible for you too. And there is an amazing community here. The eating disorder community is absolutely phenomenal, from volunteers to professionals to the families and friends and loved ones of those who are suffering. You know, we're all in this fight together, and you don't have to be alone. You shouldn't walk alone or fear being alone, because there will always be someone here that can walk you through every step of this journey. And so I hope that we've imparted some encouragement and hope to you tonight. And again, we would love for you to check out the Eating Disorder Hope website at eatingdisorderhope.com. And you can also see we have a page of amazing inspirational stories of recovery from so many different people in so many different walks of life who have also recovered from an eating disorder, whether it's anorexia or binge eating disorder or bulimia. So we would love for you to check that out to find some more encouragement and hope. And Jacquelyn, would you like to give any other closing thoughts before we say goodbye to all our wonderful viewers tonight?
No, I think you've done a great job. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we wish you much health and recovery and joy, and we hope to hear from you.
Absolutely. And just one final thing, we would love for you to join us for our upcoming Google Hangouts, which are available also on the Eating Disorder Hope website. And we do have some tweet chats coming up as well, and we'll be featuring some amazing guests. Our next Google Hangout is on March 19th with Brian Cuban, and we're going to be talking about trauma and eating disorders. So we hope that you'll join us. And again, God bless you all, and thank you so much for being with here tonight. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.